If you just bear with me one moment and I'll confirm that we're live. Okay, Chair, we're now live. Over to yourself.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's extraordinary joint performance scrutiny meeting. We will be covering a couple of agenda items, but significantly our initial budget tonight. So while everybody settles in, I'll just go through our general housekeeping. So I just would like to remind everybody present that this is a hybrid meeting, and it's going to be live streamed as well as recorded via the internet. And then this recording is going to be archived for future viewing. If any participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand in person if they happen to be sitting in the chamber, and if not, use the remote raise hand function, which is located in that bottom left-hand side of our screens. This is going to put you into the speaker queue accordingly. When you're subsequently invited to address by myself, please then press your activation button in the bottom centre of your screen. Please be patient and aware there'll be a small time lag and that you do not need to press the button again. The response of the system isn't instant, and if that button or desk microphone changes to red, then it actually has responded. If a participant raises their hand via that remote function and you're not subsequently invited to address by myself, please could you turn your camera on or indicate or place a message in that chat function. When invited to address by myself, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is switched on to ensure that you can be seen and heard when actively participating. If you've got any technical problems, bring it to my attention or to the attention of Amy, our Democratic Services Officer. Once you've participated, please remember to turn your activation button off as not to delay other participants from coming onto the screen and to avoid background noise when other participants are speaking. So before we get into the agenda tonight, can I just welcome everybody to this meeting. Members, we are 4 scrutiny committees tonight, so there's quite a few of us who are interested in these agenda items. Our officers, our cabinet members, and also any members of the public who may be participating at home or watching this when we finished tonight. So if we move on then to part 1 of our agenda, which is our apologies for absence. I don't know if we've had many tonight, Amy.
Oh, hi, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor
Buckley. James, sorry.
That's no problem. Councillor Buckley and Councillor Campbell.
Okay, thank you very much. And then our agenda item 2 tonight, minutes of the last joint performance scrutiny we had, which was on the 16th of December. Hopefully everybody has read those minutes, and if everybody agrees that it is an accurate recording of that meeting, can we have a hand to move, please? Thank you, Councillor Payne. Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. So moving on to agenda item 3. This is our declarations of interest for tonight. I don't know, James, have we had any? And please, members, speak now if you do have something.
None have been received.
Thank you, James. Anybody? No? That's brilliant. Thank you. Marvellous. So we'll move on to agenda item 4. Now, this is the first of our references. It's come from Cabinet from the 15th of January, and it's our initial budget 26-27 and our medium-term financial plan 26-27 to 2030-2031. Tonight, we're being asked to look at the initial budget, the savings progress, revised fees, and also that medium-term financial plan. We've been asked to pass our comments on to Cabinet. We're not being asked to approve the budget tonight. It's still in its initial form There will be other meetings to come before this has become the final version, and then that will be in our full council meeting, and that's the opportunity that we'll all have then to finally approve the budget. So before I go any further, can we have, I don't know if we've got Tom tonight to take us through the highlights.
Might be me.
Oh, is it Matt?
Yeah,
Sorry, Matt.
that's quite all right.
Welcome. Please go ahead. Thank
Evening,
you.
everyone. And you're quite right. We're in the tail end of the 4-week consultation period, both on the budget and medium-term financial plan and the draft capital programme proposals. I've a short presentation to take you through to introduce both items. So I'll pause at the end of the revenue item, but ask colleagues to skip to the next steps section that's right at the tail end of the presentation when we get to the end of the revenue. For those who've attended the political group meetings, unfortunately the slides will have a familiar feel to them, but I don't suppose there's any problems in having a bit of a reminder what's in them. But also we do have colleagues in attendance today who wouldn't have been, who weren't able to make the political group meetings, and also some non-members who are members of the scrutiny committees as well. Just to wait a second and we'll have the slides up in a moment. Thank you very much. Is that better with the microphone as well? Okay. So the first slide, I'm just going to take you through the headlines in the budget and medium-term financial plan report for consultation. For 26/7, the council is faced with significant financial pressures, and this has been a common theme across our budget setting in recent years. There's pressures of just short of £28 million, and those extend to £84 million when we consider them across the medium term. The underlying pressures were £35 million, and we've been doing quite a bit of work right from the inception of our budget planning to manage those down. We're very mindful when we're looking at the balance between increasing council tax, a deliverable savings programme, and a certain level of cost pressures, that all those won't fall into line when you're trying to put, if you were we to put £35 million, all of it into the budget. But equally, we're very mindful that we don't want any of those pressures that don't come forward springing up as overspends in the new financial year as well. We need to have a deliverable, realistic budget. The gap in the report between the cost pressures and the available funding is £6.6 million in 2026/7, and that is a relatively small number on the back of a favourable settlement and some other good fortune on some cost elements of the budget. But it is worth noting that gap extends to £34 million over the medium term, and there is less certainty on funding, and certainly the UK government's budget spending review in the summer was, as ever, front-loaded. As I've said, we have had some good fortune, and it's appropriate to call that. We're part of the Cardiff and Vale Pension Fund. That's revalued every 3 years, and the outcome of this triennial review has been a significant reduction in the employer's pension contributions. That saves the council £3.8 million a year. As a consequence of that, there's a relatively modest savings programme being proposed at £2.772 million. A couple of facts on our funding. On the bottom half of this first slide, council continues to be the second lowest funding council per head of population in Wales. We've set a budget in 2025 £6.5 million below SSA, so that's the notional level at which the settlement assumes we need to spend. But we will, importantly, be significantly above that notional assessment for our key spending blocks, and this is very much in line with the financial strategy and the objectives of the council, education and social services. Council tax is currently modelled at 5.5% increase for 26/7. Vale Morgan's tax position relative to other Welsh authorities for the 25/6 council tax, and this is at a band D county element only, is 6.86 below the Welsh median, assuming that a 5.5% increase with the sixth lowest. And there's a slide shortly that will go into that in a little bit more detail. Thank you. Could have the next slide. We've had the usual uncertainty on the funding side with our budget setting. We've lobbied hard for a 3-year settlement and multi-year settlements for ever since I've been here, really, and I'm sure the council was doing it even before I joined. I think there was the prospect of that back in the summer with the UK government's 3-year spending review. But it's come up against the Senedd elections and the current administration of the Senedd not wishing to impose its spending plans on a new administration coming in. So quite early on after the UK spending review, it did become apparent to us that we would be having a single year settlement for 26/7. Also, because of the imbalance in the administration at the Senedd, there's a need for negotiation to take place to be able to get a budget through. So for that reason, Mark Gyfarfod also kept some of the upside in the consequentials from the UK settlement back. So in October, with the draft Welsh government, there was only potentially 2.5% increase across counties in Wales, with quite a high floor at 2.3%. So in November, we received the provisional settlement, and that was late November, the 24th, and that was with we were at the floor 2.3%, and actually back in October we were quite aware with a 2.5% settlement and 2.3 floor, that's exactly where we would be. Without the floor we would have been at something like 1.3%, and that's due to the strong council tax base that we have in the Vale. There's been a huge amount of lobbying by Welsh counties, including the Vale through the leader, and fortunately there was agreement reached behind the scenes at the Senedd between Plaid and Labour on the budget proposals, and the headroom was released. So quite hot on the heels of the 24th of November provisional settlement numbers, we had a further 2.5%, 2% nationally, so 4.5% across Wales that was announced on the 9th of December. Because of this larger pot, the maths of it works in our favour. The council tax base has a lesser impact, and actually we were not needing to be protected by any floor arrangements, so a 4.3% settlement. We've pulled the budget for consultation together across the end of December, and that came to Cabinet on the 15th of January for approval, and that started the 4-week consultation period. Unusually, we've had a Welsh Government budget towards the end of January. Typically, that budget has been late February or even early March, so that's really welcome, and that takes some of the uncertainty away. And that settlement confirmed the 4.3%. So that's really good news. Next slide, please. Okay. I'm not going to go through every number in this slide, you'll be glad to hear, but I do want to pull out some of the key figures. We're really committed to having open and transparent finances at the council, and in keeping with previous years, we've tracked through any changes through the updates that we've provided earlier in the budget cycle with the current position. So the starting point for this slide is the MTFP update that we brought forward on the 4th of September. That does feel some considerable time ago now. At that time, there was a gap of £10 million. We were continuing to work through the pressures, as well as savings proposals bit in the background. And at that time, we needed to bring in 3 particular pressures. Some further pressures on social care. We'd had the consultation on the fire levy, and we needed to bring that into account. And also there were some changes made at a council level on car parking charges. So that's the 563. We also needed to gross up our budget on the back of the settlement, and that was in respect of national insurance contributions and teachers' pay. So these were 2 items that were in respect of the current financial year, 2025-6. You'll recall the first Labour government budget actually increased national insurance contributions by 2%. That was back at the tail end of 2024, but it took some while for the funding to follow. And what we had in as late as July 2025-6, we had a one-off grant for that, and that had been routed through the staff elements of SSA. So we received about £3.6 million in a one-off grant in 25-6. That's been built into the settlement going forward, so it's been given an uplift, and that's the 3.960, the top half of the page. And also, similarly, the settlement in 25-6 had an assumed increase in pay for teachers. The actual pay award was higher. There was a one-off grant to compensate councils for that in 2025-6, and that too is built into the settlement going forward. A couple of those numbers we've then needed to, as well as putting that on the funding side, it's on the spend side. Some of that was already accounted for in our earlier work, so there is a small upside, well not small, it's £1.3 million on the bottom of that column that's welcome. We then need to bring in the 4.3 settlement. As you'll see, that's had a really significant impact on our finances for 26-7. That's an extra £4.6 million. At this stage, we're also grappling with balancing the budget overall. And whilst we've been modelling council tax increases up at 3.9% to that point, the report in front of you this evening now models council tax at 5.5%. That brings in an additional £1.7 million. We've also taken the opportunity to review and strengthen the financial sustainability of the council, and that's in the bottom half of the table. There's a number of investments going in, both in terms of the public realm, about 750k. We've experienced quite a lot of volatility in our social care costs over recent years. There's been more stability in 2025-6, but it's always a risk. So there's a £1 million demand contingency added in, and there's also 500k to top up the reshaping and transformation reserve. That's the heart of our approach to financial sustainability over the medium term. On the bottom half of the table, the 1.5 million, the key element within that is £1 million unbadged to meet pressures in our schools. There's a slide later on setting out all the pressures that we have in the schools and how we're striving to meet them. The next couple of columns I've briefly talked about. So there's 3.8 upside on the 3.8 million upside on the pensions revaluation in terms of the lower employer contributions, and there's the £2.772 million saving programme brought in, which brings the final column in balance, assuming the 4.3% grant settlement, 5.5% on council tax, supported by the £2.772 million savings programme. That's all for that slide. Thank you. Just to highlight some of the key cost pressures within that £27.7 million figure, and these are categorised in the manner in which you're used to seeing in our reporting. The top box on the left I've pretty much been through. It's fair to say in the refresh report back in December there was little in the way of investment, and I've just talked around the way in which we're seeking to strengthen our finances through those various pressures being brought in. Demography continues to be a large pressure for the council. This £1.150 million going into social care, and that's across both adults and children's. Children's in particular, very difficult to forecast, but we are seeing growth there that needs to be reflected in our budget setting. There's also growth in pressures for additional learning needs. There's additional 598k going into the special school, and alongside that the need for further transport provision. It's worth mentioning mainstream demography. We actually have a decline in pupil population, so the reduction in those pupil numbers is reflected in the budget, with a reduction in the age-weighted pupil unit element of funding in the formula adjusted. Over to the right, the most significant financial pressure facing us at the moment is pay inflation. We've assumed 3% for both teachers' pay awards and for NJC. It's really difficult to forecast pay inflation in the current economic environment. It's fair to say that it's taken some time for inflation to come under control. It occasionally does show signs of heading in the right direction. It did dip to 3.2% in November, but October, but it picked back up to 3.2%, 3.4% soon after. Nevertheless, it is forecast and to reduce to the UK government's target of 2% in the next year, 18 months, and we're seeing that from our various economic commentators. But we are living in an unstable world at the moment, and it doesn't take much to impact on inflation at a global level. The general inflation on the bottom left, just short of £6 million, by far away the biggest driver on that number are our social services provider costs. They're very much influenced by the real living wage, and that came in at 6.74% when it was announced in October. That comes into effect from the 1st of April this year. There's relatively small growth in capital financing costs. That's in respect of our Sustainable Communities for Learning programme, but that's primarily funded through grant and other contributions, so a minimal borrowing commitment against that. On other pressures, there's £6 million. The largest single component of that is £2.6 million. We have experienced financial pressures on our social care budgets this year, and it's important in setting a realistic budget for 26/7 that those are built into the base going forward. We also have ongoing additional learning needs pressures of £2.3 million which are built in, and then also at the bottom of that section, the £1 million for schools in general. We could have the next slide, please. The savings programme of £2.772 million, we are seeing the balance of our savings programme in terms of proportion is more greatly weighted to our reshaping and transformation programme, and 3 elements of it appear on this slide. Against target operating model, we're seeing increased income of 436k. There's a lot of work being done on data and understanding our procurement position, and there's some initial savings coming through of 40k across a number of initiatives in highways. And then on the bottom left, there are a couple of programmes across the council on service transformation led by the directorates. So there's demand management and transformation proposals across social services, additional learning needs and school transport, and those total just short of £1.6 million. There are some more traditional elements of savings in the programme as well. Those amount to 729k. There are a number of new delivery models, review of existing projects, and some managed headcount reductions. But those headcount reductions are mainly, well, actually exclusively in respect of proposals that came forward in 2025-6, so full year effects of those. Thank you. The next slide is some additional detail on council tax and how we compare with the rest of Wales. So against the 22 councils, we're the 6th lowest. I think the chart does highlight what a significant range of council tax there is across Wales. Again, these are the county element only and the Band D equivalent. So Cardiff over on the left, lowest, touch over £1,500 for 2025-6, and on the other end of the scale, Merthyr Tydfil at just a touch over £2,000. You'll notice that we're 6.86% below the median. That's very similar to the level at which we're spending below our assessed need. So the simple maths of it there is, were we to spend at our full need, we would be need to bring in additional council tax of an equivalent level. The proposals of 5.5% at the moment, were they to go through at council in March, that would, in my view, leave us certainly no higher than our 6th position. And Lismore above us, currently we would need to increase our council tax by 3% more than them to overtake them. There are surveys of council tax, proposed potential council tax levels across Wales, and it's very unlikely that we would overtake Lismore. And below us, which is possibly more likely given their aggressive council tax strategy over the last 2-3 years, Pembrokeshire are currently £5 per Band D lower than the Vale of Glamorgan. They've been increasing their council tax by double digits for a number of years. People recall seeing a similar chart to this just 3-4 years ago, where Pembrokeshire were very much hanging off the left-hand side of the chart. Thank you. The next table, this is a common feature in our reporting, where we attempt to demonstrate the extent that we've needed to move resources across the council. We'd normally accompany this with the SSAs against these broad blocks, but we didn't have that detail in front of us at the time of writing. We do now have those numbers, of course, and those we'll bring those into the report in February, the draft budget report. But you'll see our adjusted original budget was £331 million, and that will increase to a net expenditure of £354 million for 26/7 were these proposals to go forward. There's we will have some challenges reporting against the SSAs because some of the pension savings, for example, skewing the growth that we've put in against some services. So that's all I'll say on that slide for the moment. Thank you. I do need to say a few words though on schools. Schools present the council with the greatest financial risk at this time, and there's a slide on reserves at the moment where I'll cover that risk in a little bit more detail. But what we are striving to do, and certainly this is a repeat of what we did in 25/6 budget setting, we are genuinely attempting to put all the pressures we know that are impacting on schools into our budget proposals for 26/7. So to that end, we are fully funding the pay award at the forecast level of 3%. We're building in that grant that's in, and that's also in funding in the settlement for the pay differential in 25/6. There've been some changes in terms of ALN coordinator pay and being brought into the leadership scales. We've transferred in all the money that we've had from Welsh Government on that. We've had some challenges over utility costs pretty much since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where we saw spikes in such costs, and we'd attempted to smooth those changes through reserves. That strategy's unwound, and we've been left with some residual pressures, so we need to fund those appropriately. There's the £1 million towards the historical pressures in our schools. And then there's a couple of items of additional money for ALN. So there's £500,000 for mainstream support. There's also 216k for Welsh medium secondary ALN resource at Ysgol Bro Morgannwg, and there's specialist resource bases at Cowbridge and St Cyrus at 193. Also that I've skipped over is the ongoing commitment to supporting schools. We put some one-off money in to support procurement activity, and we've actually now rolled that forward. There's then the matching of the pension adjustment, so reduction in budgets against the known pension liability reductions. There's been some review of the school formulas and this a transfer of money from special into mainstream as well. And the other thing that's not spelt out on this slide but I need to mention, and it's the only area that we've not consciously funded all the known pressures, is with the special school. Based on the growth in places, we'd have needed to be putting £1 million in 26/7. That's had to be scaled back down to 598k. So there's an assumed efficiency for the school. Liz and Trevor have been working with the school since across the autumn on being able to deliver that, albeit that's naturally a challenge for the school. So that's the current school's position. A bit now on the next slide, thank you, on reserves and sustainability of the budget proposals. Excuse me. The reserves are starting to become an area of concern for the council. There's a planned reduction from the £40.7 million that we're forecasting at the end of this current financial year down to £28 million at the end of 2031, and that's predominantly with planned use of reserves, and that's planned use of the service reserves and also capital reserves that are contributing to the capital schemes in our capital programme. The worrying line though is the schools. At the end of 2024/5 financial year, we had a collective deficit of £4.137 million in our schools, and we needed to do a review of our reserves as a council and actually match that sum against council's reserves. So there's been a reduction of reserves, and we're now holding a matched reserve of £4.1 million. We are having since we issued budgets to schools this time last year, significant deficits being reported on across our schools. especially on a number of outlier schools. And in the Q2 monitoring, that was as much as £14.6 million, although there are grants continuing to come through that will reduce that figure, but it's not going to make a massive dent in it at this stage. So on the current forecasting, we'd need to be setting aside another £9 million of council reserves to match that increase in the collective deficit. We've just badged that as a single line at the moment, but what we will have to do, and we are doing as part of the work for the draft budget, is identifying exactly where that's going to have to come from in respect of the council's reserves. So that is a huge risk for us. We've not reflected the school's forward forecasts of their reserves in the subsequent columns of this table, but it's fair to say if the issues in schools aren't addressed, they would quickly swamp that £28 million on the far right-hand side, and that's a real severe issue in terms of the financial sustainability of the council. The estimated gap over the 5-year medium-term plan is £34 million, and we've outlined in the report how we need to close the gap of £6.6 million in 26/7. We've not yet set out more detailed proposals how we close the gap across the medium term. We have in the report set out our reshaping and transformation framework, and colleagues have been working through that since Christmas and indeed before, and there'll be more detailed proposals coming forward against that framework in the draft budget report that comes to Cabinet on the 26th of February. I do have a next step slide, Amy, but it's after the 3 capital slides. So if you could just take us to the end of the presentation for now, please. Thank you. So this is this. So as I've said at the outset, we're almost at the end of the 4-week consultation period. So it commenced the day after Cabinet had approved the budget for consultation and runs to this Friday, the 13th of February. Since issuing the report, we've had the Welsh Government budget approved, and we had the settlement detail the following day on the 20th of January. We've done a number of group briefings across the last 2 weeks, and we had the last of those yesterday afternoon. We have the joint scrutiny session here this evening for you to put forward your comments on the budget for consultation. We've also done some of the stakeholder engagement, and Tom and I met with the Public Service Board last week. We will then, based on the resident consultation feedback and feedback from scrutiny, we'll start pulling together the draft budget report. That'll be published next Friday, actually, won't it? So that's quite not too far off now, and that will come to Cabinet on the 26th of February, and that's for recommendation for approval onto Council on the 9th of March. So that's just by way of introduction to the revenue budget and the medium-term financial plan. I'm happy to take any questions, and obviously I've got colleagues here to help me out with any detail you might have as well. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much for that, Matt. And gosh, my goodness, I mean, over the last 6 months, and certainly for my committee, we have seen an improving position, which we can all be very, very grateful for. But as you say, you know, we still have to find some savings, and we will still need to to put our council tax up by at least 5.5%. But you know, very grateful for the work you've done. That you managed to get to a balanced budget every year amazes me, to be completely honest with you. But anyway, so let's open the floor and see how many questions we get from our assembled members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Johnson is indicating in the chamber, and Councillor Franks
Marvellous.
online.
Who came first? I think go Councillor Johnson. You go first, please. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much, Chair. Just waiting for everybody to put their headphones on in the chamber. I think everybody has now done that. Thank you. Couple of questions and also a couple of comments. Firstly, thank you very much to the staff for all of the work putting this budget together and also explaining the situation to us as political parties over the last few weeks. I appreciate that work. Note, as the chair did, that the situation has improved over the last couple of months. One important point was the Plaid Cymru and Welsh Government agreement to increase the settlement to this local authority to some £4.6 million. I think this is some 4.35% in terms of savings on council tax. I note from the report before us that there are far fewer cuts compared with other years, in particular in areas that people frequently come into contact with. I remember having a deep conversation about parking fees and the removal of the multi-storey in Barry Centre, but is no longer part of the suggestions. Because in spite of that, and in spite of the extended producer responsibility, and in spite of the cuts on how much we pay into the pension pot, and in spite of the additional funds that was raised for local authorities, the suggestion still seems to be that there will be a overinflation council tax increase. So inflation being 3.9% last September, we're now modelling 5.5%, 1.7 million increase. So that's all in terms of comments, but then a few questions in various areas. There's an additional £1 million for education pressures, but as we heard from, school debts are substantial. Do we believe that this will be useful for the schools? It's noted, of course, that there's an increase in spend for the resource spaces and so forth, and special schools. Is the funding sufficient for social care? In terms of where the majority of the savings are expected to be, is this right sizing? Outlining the savings which are anticipated in terms of some council priorities, Vale 2030 and so forth. Are we doing enough in terms of our priorities with regards to decarbonisation and nature emergency? These are some of the things which have been noted. It's 6 or 7 years ago now, so the timeline is running out for some of these things. How are we addressing this in this budget? And one final point. There was mention in the report of an additional conditional 1% as a proposal for us to discuss, to have an increase, a higher council tax, and this related to green parks and children's services and rural bus services. Are there more details with regards to these topics, in particular the rural buses? If you're talking about spending the extra £500,000, which buses where, which impact, or is this a bit of a whataboutery or a red herring? Because it's interesting to have this for discussion but without the additional detail. So I don't know how we can reach a conclusion. So thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to put forward the questions, and I'm looking forward to the more detailed discussions ahead of us. Thank you.
If I start and isn't it? Myself in stereo then.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. While Matt gets his headphone on, are you okay?
Yep. I'll
Yeah, good,
start,
good,
but I may bring colleagues in. First on just on one of your comments around fewer cuts, I think it's worth reflecting where the council have been the last 4 years, and where we've had savings programmes of £8 million a year. That's been a real challenge to deliver. So it does help to have this period of time where there's a more modest savings programme to deliver. And I think that will give the council a bit of breathing space to really concentrate and focus on the reshaping and transformation programme as we look towards financial sustainability and making sure that we balance the books across the medium term as well. I personally feel that we have had very much a front-loaded settlement, and I am less optimistic for what's coming down the line in terms of grants in future years. The £1 million is a bit of a curate's egg, isn't it? It's very difficult to work out how much we need to put in our schools. I'm definitely of the opinion that the £1 million will make a difference. There are a large number of schools who are experiencing relatively, and it is relatively minor pressures and aren't that far off from balancing their budgets, and doubtless that £1 million will make a difference. The challenge we have are with those outlier schools, and in simple terms, we could have had another 20-30 million pounds in the school's budget, and once that works its way through the formula, they'd have still been in challenge. So there are some fundamental challenges that need to be addressed at those schools. Right sizing. I've forgotten what that. So thank you. So social care. We've had some significant volatility in social care, and certainly in 24/5 there was some significant overspends. We've given that a huge amount of attention, and that's not to say through the director and his social care budget programme board that he holds monthly, that there wasn't already a lot of focus on spending. That's continued. Both myself and my accountancy manager attend those meetings on a regular basis. There's a huge amount of focus on the budget by that directorate, and I'm confident, well, as far as you can be, given some of the volatility that we know is difficult to forecast in children's, that we've right-sized the budget appropriately for 26-27. You mentioned council priorities and Vale 2030, and especially decarbonisation. There are some decarbonisation schemes in the capital programme that I can talk to when we come to that item shortly. And then on the rural buses, youth provision and parks, for which we'd need a further 1% on the council tax above the 5.5 proposed. There has been initial thinking on those, but the report, as you rightly say, doesn't cover the full detail. But those are in keeping with Vale 2030, and certainly would make a difference to the residents of the county. Certainly, the youth proposals would have a preventative impact as well, as we attempt to bring that theme into our budget setting. But I'll let others say more about that possibly.
Thank you, Matt. I'm just wondering if at this point, especially with the proposals with the additional 1%, if the leader might like to come in and say a few words. It seems, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Chair. I'm very happy to. It's an interesting way of looking at it. I think that we all know that we've gone through the budget process, looking at whether it be statutory services and built on cost pressures, etc. But I think that through those discussions, that 3 areas of concern came out from a range of sources. One was youth services and the looking at preventative services, inclusion services that are desperately needed by young people in our more deprived communities. There is a proposal, an outline proposal for that, which we would be able to share before this goes to council. In terms of rural bus service, that's slightly different. The conversations there are that if you look at Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation and you look at the fact that some of our rural communities are classified as at the top of the deprivation scale because of connectivity issues, and that is transport, but also to a certain degree digital connectivity. And members will be aware that a couple of years ago, when we were at risk of losing all rural buses, we actually put about 470,000, I think it was at that time, to keep those buses going. But I think we have to recognise that 1 an hour and 1 train an hour, which we continue to lobby over, but where we are at the moment is 1 bus and 1 train is not a good enough service. But what an adequate service is, while we are hopefully moving towards the bus franchise in Wales, is actually should be a discussion for local people. Is it that we need an increase of community transport to join up the dots, so to speak? Do we need to have a more regular official bus service? And I think that those are questions that would need to be asked, and I personally would suggest that is something that maybe Scrutiny should also be looking at to get the residents' voice in. And the green flag parks is, we have maintained our parks, at a particular level, but people really did feel passionately about us having green flags, and we know that is what it would cost to take us up that little bit of extra level for our parks. I was talking to some young people in Pencoitry yesterday, and they were telling me how much they value parks and green spaces. And I don't think they're that far apart from the rest of the population, particularly in Barry and particularly in Penarth, in those areas. So that's the background to that. We didn't feel that it should be put as part of the overall proposal, because this is more of an extra that we can actually talk to people about and say, is this something that is worth an extra 31p on a band D a week, and is that something we should do? And we'll have that discussion. Hopefully we've got views from people in the consultation, but also as we go forward in Cabinet into full council. There was something else I was going to comment on there. There's a different point that you made, Ian. I'm not, hang on, there was something else. It'll come back to me. I was going to say that, but the brain's gone. No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that. It was something that was more specific in terms of process. But I will remember. Oh no, I know what it was. It was about the agreement in Welsh Government, and yes, it was hugely welcome. But I think we also have to pay tribute to virtually every local authority leader in Wales that lobbied and harassed their political colleagues in the Senedd, and whether that be independent, Lib Dem, Plaid or Labour. But I think what we have found, and we are very, very grateful that Plaid stepped up. But the other thing that I will say for this budget, we don't know where we're going to be after May. We don't know if we're going to be in a position working with a Senedd that values local government. Local government, even though settlements haven't been good, Welsh government have actually looked after us better than UK government has in England. So we don't want to go back to austerity. We've seen a little glimpse of what it could be like if there's investment in local government. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, I would just say from the additional 1% and what we are looking at and what we could consider with that. I mean, youth services over the last 10 years, since the 2018 decision by the Tory administration of the time to cut it back to the bone, has only really, kind of like in the last few years started to increase its reach. And it's such important work, isn't it? It's really important. So, whatever more we can do to build that back, to support our young people is critical. And being a councillor from a rural ward, I would say that, whether we're talking about the villages and all of the villages around Cowbridge where our children go to school there, there isn't a direct route, and it's certainly for the elderly as well. So again, that is critical work to review our reactive community transport and making it fit for our times that we live in now and for young and old. So I mean, the ideas are really important, and that we do it with our communities also and get their involvement so we make it work is excellent. Ian, do you want to come back in on anything you've heard now, or is it okay for me to go on to Councillor Franks?
I think I've made some of the points there. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Franks, you've been very patient. Please come in.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I would like to thank the officers for the briefings on the draft budget. It was extremely helpful, and it prepared the ground for today for me to have a more informed debate. And I would also like to thank the leader for acknowledging the role of Plaid Cymru in assisting in obtaining the extra £4 million. So I'm mainly addressing my remarks to Cabinet members and invite a response. Fundamentally, I question how robust is this budget. In the current year, there has been a catastrophic failure to adequately fund our schools. How much we are reasonably adrift is still a bit of a mystery. Schools need adequate funds to deliver the curriculum. We all know the challenge, and only this week, Estin's annual report has stated, and I quote, "Urgent improvements is needed to teaching and literacy in schools, or more young people in Wales will fail to reach their potential." So this is serious stuff. It would be nice to know, it is essential to know, how will the proposed budget address these challenges? I know it was intended to talk tough to the schools to get their budgets in line, but apparently the Cabinet backed down on that. Although all I have seen is a very small press release. I haven't seen any committee report that details what actually happened in the room. Moving to the highways budget, this is clearly totally inadequate, or at least it has been for quite a few years. Our roads are falling to bits, small potholes become craters, and whole sections of road are collapsing into disrepair. Low-grade repairs are being undertaken to minimise the initial cost, which lead to higher costs. And again, I want to thank the officers for what they are doing on such a limited budget. So I'm not complaining about the staff. It should be noticed that Welsh Government initial funding for the Vale was very meagre, but as we've heard, we've got a little bit of a windfall. So well done. Then there's good news about the pension contribution, another nice windfall. So there is unexpected finance available for the next financial year. So given the comments I've made, I don't think it's unreasonable for me not to have any confidence in this budget. And I fear in a year's time, we will be hearing excuses why the budget has failed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Frank. So I guess in all of those questions, really, Matt, it's would it be enough? Will it be enough? Can you come back on any of those for him, please?
Chair, with your permission, the Chief Executive would like to come in.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Please
Thank
come
you,
in,
Chair.
Rob.
I'm not sure about wonderful, but time will tell. I guess in response to Councillor Frank's his questions and his comments, he raises two issues, but I see them as being interconnected. First up, he raises the issue with schools' budgets, and then he raises the issue of funding into highways and potholes. And I think I may have given him a very similar answer last time we discussed school budgets, because he's more or less answered his own question. He's asking about the adequacy of school budgets, but then his second comment is criticising this council for not putting enough into highways and resurfacing and potholes, and therein lies the issue. We have to make difficult choices. In terms of the comments regarding, and I quote, catastrophic failure to fund schools, I think we need to look at our 53 schools, and a significant number of them perform their duties within their budget. We have a minority that are far in excess of their budget. So I think the difficulty for us as a council is we have that massive discrepancy across our schools family. We therefore are faced with being between a rock and a hard place, really, if I'm honest, because on the one hand, we've got Audit Wales, looking at our performance in terms of how are we holding schools to account, how robust are we as a council in terms of seeking recovery plans, how robust are we in terms of looking at the entire budget deficit across our schools. And then on the other hand, we are faced with very difficult challenges and decisions to be made in individual schools in terms of those budgets where there is an overspend and where recovery plans are very difficult to draw up. So on the one hand, we have that situation, and then on the other hand, we have an issue being raised like potholes, where of course we'd like to spend more. We'd like to spend more in our schools as well. But the cake is only a certain size, and how you divide that cake up is always a challenge. We've come up with a balanced budget. I have every confidence that we will be able to deliver services within that balanced budget throughout the year. Unlike Councillor Franks, clearly, it will be challenging, it will be difficult, and we will continue to work across the council and work in partnership with our schools in particular to try and set realistic recovery plans in what is a very challenging time. So that would be my response to those comments, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chief Exec Rob. Councillor Franks, would you like to come back in, or are you? Yes?
Thank you very much. Well, I always listen very carefully to the Chief Executive, and I'm very grateful for his words. But what would help me to understand a little bit more, if it was explained what happened to have the proposed meeting with the various schools and the political leadership of this council to be cancelled. We were told that formal notices were being served on, was it 7? This was going to be very important. There were going to be perhaps hard discussions, and suddenly it all stopped. There was a Friday, I think it was a Friday morning meeting with the representatives of the head teachers, and then a very brief press release was issued saying, no, we're not going ahead. We've changed our minds and we'll do something else. So this is bewildering to many people. So maybe we should have a political answer, but I thank the Chief Executive for his comments.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank
the Chief
you, Councillor
Executive.
Franks.
Thank you.
Oh.
The Chief Executive would like to come back in, Chair, with your permission.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I'm going to start off by caveating that this isn't a political answer. It's an honest answer. Not that a political answer wouldn't be honest. Stop digging. I think Councillor Franks is partly misinformed because the process hasn't just stopped. The meetings did go ahead as planned with 7 schools, with the 7 head teachers, with the chairs of governing bodies and other representatives. Those meetings were on the whole constructive, I think it's fair to say. So the process hasn't stopped. Indeed, the process is only just starting. There will be future meetings. What we agreed with all 7 schools is that we would continue regular discussions before the end of this financial year and into the next financial year. And the rationale for having those discussions is to continue to work on the recovery plans for the individual schools. Each recovery plan is very different. The discussions with each of the schools was very different depending on their budget position. So those discussions are continuing. They are challenging, as you would expect. But we also recognise that if we're able to solve this issue, we are going to have to work in partnership with our school leaders. After all, we are part of the same council, and the risk of deficit budgets in schools is a risk to the whole council. So those meetings are continuing. The process didn't just stop. The process is only just getting going. And every school that we met were comfortable in having additional discussions with us moving through this. So I don't really understand how we can conclude that the process stopped. The process is only just starting. Thank you, Chair. And if there now needs to be a political answer, I'm sure it'll be coming.
Thank you, Rob. I think it's fair to say, though, Councillor Franks, and I'm sure you'll agree, that there's quite a lot of misinformation out there these days on social media. And we all know, and we all are quite clear that we have to support our schools and we have to help them, certainly the ones who are in a very difficult position with their deficit, to get to a position where it doesn't threaten all of the work of the council. So it's essential. As you know, because you're part of our Resources Scrutiny Committee, we have asked for some more detailed information on the work that the procurement officer has done and the work that the team are doing to support those schools with a bit more detail, and that will be coming back to our committee. So we also will keep the pressure on because it's essential. It's essential that they succeed and they get to an even keel with their budgets. And for our pupils, we have to do this, don't we? Do you want to ask any more questions now, or are you okay? Thank you.
No, thank you for the contributions, and thank you for second bite of the cherry.
No problem. Right, do we have anybody else who'd like to ask any questions on this part? We haven't got to the medium-term financial plan yet.
Councillor Goodjohn is
Amy?
indicating, Chair. Thank you.
Marvellous. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Please come in.
Thank you, Chair. One thing I wanted to pick up on that no one else has so far in this meeting is the fact that the additional investment in our communities and in our services, including our schools and social care, adds up to approximately £25 million in this budget as it stands before us, which is an increase of about 7.5% over the entire council's revenue budget, which we've talked about inflation busting before. I mean, that it definitely is inflation busting. And I have been sick to the stomach over past years of conservative austerity in the UK government, leading us to be forced to council tax rises while cuts in services were prevailing. So I'm very proud that there is proper investment within this budget into our communities and into the services that we hold so dear. Why I'm speaking today is to simply make a plea on youth services, because as was mentioned before, the disastrous cuts in the past to youth services have had a disastrous impact on my community that I represent in Cadoxton and across Barry and across the entire Vale of Glamorgan for young people, particularly those in the greatest need, in the most deprived areas with the most poverty. It should be noted that youth services provide an enormous benefit, not just to those young people, but to the community as a whole. The economic benefits are huge when it comes to our work with NEETs, not in employment, education or training. The benefits to the economy are 5 times that we put in. The support that it brings to young people literally saves lives. So if I want to put in comment to Cabinet to hope that we will find the additional funding for those youth services that desperately need it, that we have committed to protecting in the past, and that needs to be funded to support our communities getting through the crisis that they've faced in recent years.
Here. Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. I think we can all agree with that. Anybody else, please? I can't see anyone online, but Amy, is there anybody else with hands up in the room?
No indication in the chamber, Chair.
Okay, that's wonderful. Can we move on to the second part of this first agenda item then, please? The medium-term financial plan bit. Thank you.
Chair,
Back to Matt.
I believe Matt's covered the medium-term financial plan section.
Oh, sorry.
I believe you're referring to the capital slides. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. I do apologise.
No problem, Chair. Yep, I'll put the slides on for you now, and Matt will come in.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the second paper, does the committee want to make any comments onto Cabinet as per the recommendation?
Do apologise, Matt. So yes, I think we were asked today as a committee to pass our comments and any views back on to Cabinet. So if it's possible for Amy, all of the views that have been expressed today to be shared with Cabinet, if that's not too onerous a task for you. And yes, it's very remiss of me. I should have made sure that I finished this this particular agenda item off properly. So if nobody else has any other comments they'd like to make, and we're happy for all of our comments as we have shared them today to be passed on to Cabinet, if I can have a hand to move, and we can move on to the next one. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Sorry, very much back to you now, Matt, with the next agenda item and another reference from Cabinet from the 15th of January and the capital plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I've just got 3 slides. You'll be glad to hear to introduce this second agenda item. It's a really important item because at the end of the day, it's the investment this council is making into the county, and we often should, we really should badge it as the capital investment programme. We have a very ambitious set of proposals in front of us in the report. It proposes a capital programme of £129 million in 26/7, and that extends to £451 million, so almost £500 million over the 5-year period. That's a mixture of, I guess, good and bad news. I think it's an ambitious programme, and the challenge will be for the council to deliver that. And certainly recent experience shows that we typically deliver a capital programme in the order of £70 to £80 million. And some of that is down to the lack of flexibility in the funding that we receive to support the capital programme, and those funding sources as shown in the pie chart on the top right of the slide. You'll note that the £7.7 million at the top in the sort of darkish blue segment is general capital funding, and that's split into capital grant and supported borrowing in sort of equal measure. And that's the main area of flexibility that we have around the programme. The bulk of the programme, the purple sector, £70 million, is through specific grants and contributions, and those are grants from both Welsh and UK government. Over on the right-hand side of the chart in the pale blue is unsupported borrowing. That's our prudential borrowing, and that's predominantly borrowing to fund the development of the housing investment programme in the HRA, which we approved earlier in January. The capital financing costs arising from that spend is met from tenants' rents. So on to the first slide. There is a host of good news across the paper, and these are some of the key proposals in the report. In 26/7, there's £42 million set aside for building new schools and £2.32 million on existing schools, and that amounts to a £98 million programme across the 5 years in total for learning and skills. In 26/7, this is significant investment through the housing revenue account. There's £18.2 million on building new homes, and in excess of £24 million on improvements to the existing housing stock, and £278 million across those two categories across the 5 years. There is investment too in our highways. There's £3 million set aside for resurfacing roads in 26/7, and £1.18 million on structures, and again £16.25 million across those two headings for the 5 years of the programme. There is a need for significant investment in a couple of infrastructure items in particular. In 26/7, there's also money set aside for decarbonisation schemes, and that amounts to £1.8 million across the 5-year programme. It's worth noting that's in addition to the net zero carbon funding that's included in the new school builds. There's significant proportion in those new builds. There's also investment in our social care properties. There's 339k for children's services emergency fostering property, that's really important, and 380k on social services property roof works with PV installation over the 5-year programme. And then some other key schemes that are very worthy of note. There's £4.6 million on specialist accommodation for older people, including nursing care. That's a 3-year piece of work across 2027 to 2027-8 to 2030-31. This investment in fleet management of £1.5 million, and that come through in 26-27. There's a significant piece of work with the Penarth Marina landslip. There's slope stabilisation works that amount to £4 million in 26-27, and the tenderers work is underway for that scheme. We also have the Levelling Up Fund of £19.8 million. That there have been some delays on that with the change of UK government and also some reconfiguration of the scheme as well. But that's now set to go ahead at some pace in 26-27 through to 27-28. We've also had a number of place-based grants from UK government at the tail end of last calendar year. So there's Transforming Towns Placemaking Grant, 450k, and there's also Pride in Place, that's £1.5 million across 2 years, but flexibility in which years that's spent. And for both of those, there's a number of schemes being developed to access that grant. So back to next steps. So the capital, that's what I was going to say on capital, and it now follows the same process as the revenue budget and medium-term financial plan. So we're at the tail end of the consultation period. We've done the various briefings. We have the scrutiny this evening, and we'll reflect on all of that and build that into the draft capital programme to Cabinet on the 26th of February. That will recommend onto Council for approval on the 9th of March. Alongside those will also go the Treasury Strategy Report that's being considered by Governance and Audit on the 23rd of this month. So I was going to say by way of introduction, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Very, very ambitious capital programme there, and exciting to see that a lot of it is concerning housing improvement as well, and new houses, which our residents desperately need. Do we have any questions then for Matt on the capital programme? Yes, Councillor Franks. I don't know if there's anyone in the room, but Councillor Franks, I can see you online with your hand up first. So would you like to come in? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, I'd like to thank the officers for the briefing. It was very helpful. And as the chair has indicated, this is quite an increase in the capital budget, though I think some of it is due to I can't send to my some of it is due to underspend in the current year. But I do have a concern, because I think in many of our areas we have been hollowed out in terms of staff resources. So will we have the adequate number of staff and the necessary expertise to deliver these very important projects? I would welcome a judgment by Matt on that. And in slightly more detail, there's reference here to I think it's is it £16 million over 5 years for roads and structures. Now, I presume structures mean bridges and drainage and that type of thing. Well, One bridge can cost an absolute fortune. So is there a breakdown in this sum? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. So a question on staff resourcing to undertake these programmes, and then the budget for roads and structures. What exactly does that cover? Is that one for you, Matt, or somebody?
Yeah, I'll kick off with it.
Have a go. Thank
so
you.
we are aware of the capacity issues that the council has, and we are looking at strengthening those across the whole of the council, which will certainly help support the delivery of programmes in environment and housing. For example, there's quite a number of quite complex schemes in the programme. And the breakdown of the highway schemes and that those numbers are just relayed are set out in detail in the appendices to the report.
Oh, thank you, Chair.
Do you want to come back in, Councillor Franks?
No, that's
Okay.
a good answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Champion.
Thank you, Chair. The schools, I believe, was at 42 million this year, and the new primary in Cowbridge is, I think, 22 million. Is that 22 million going to be this year, next year? I just wonder whether you could enlighten me.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. Matt, is that another one that you can answer, or
Absolutely. The 42 million is from 26/7 onwards, so not in the current financial year. I'll need a colleague to come in and support me on that. The primary school. Oh, I think Gemma might be able to help out.
Hi, Councillor Champion. So the breakdown of the capital programme is in Appendix 1, and right at the very bottom under pipeline schemes is the extension to Cowbridge Primary Phase 2, YOLO, and it shows 12 million in 26-27, 8 million in 27-28, and then the balance of 324,000 in 28-29.
Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you, Gemma. That's great. Thanks for coming back there. Councillor Champion, are you okay with that? Do you want to ask any more questions?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Amy,
you.
anybody in the room?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Johnson is indicating, and the leader's also indicating, and Councillor Johnson is indicating he's happy for the leader to come in first.
Wonderful. You've got my eyes in that room for me. Thank you. Please come in, leader.
Thank you, Chair. I just, on the back of the education stuff, and funny enough, I've been talking to some officers over the past days about our school building programme. And when you look at it, we're looking at 18 schools completed since about 2013, with 3 more now on the starting blocks or in progress. I'm looking forward to going to visit St Richard Gwyn fairly shortly, and it's quite interesting that the total cost of St Richard Gwyn is about the same price as we paid for Penarth Learning Community as a whole when we built that. So it sort of demonstrates the way that prices have gone up. But just to give you an idea of the amount of spend that there's been on schools, and I've just been pulling some figures together from some stuff I had. From what I can see, we are talking about £340 million of investment through our school building programme alone. I will check that. That's an approximate, but I think more than anything, we also have to look at the community benefits side of our capital works. I mean, the housing stuff works, but if you look at what's happened through the school building programme, I know the Chief Exec and I were at the Cardiff and Vale College development last week, and we were talking to them about community benefits and hopefully what we can work on with them. Looking at the economic impact for the area of such big programs in terms of employment, in terms of subcontractor contracts, and opportunities. We were talking about youth services, opportunities for work experience, opportunities for apprenticeships, for people to get their first job and be supported by good quality companies. If you look at the figures, it's around about 50% of staff come from the local postcode, but actually about 87% come from Wales. So in terms, again, of the economic income locally. So when we talk about capital investment, these are things that we've prioritised. These are things that we want to take forward. But we also have to say what is the outcome from that. And again, talking to the young people in Pencoedre yesterday and saying to them, how much do you think your school cost? And they were blown away. But even more important is that they know that the reason that we build new schools is for the children that go to them. So I think that in terms of capital investment, the more we can do, the better. We've got budget for apprentices in the revenue budget, and also hopefully with a move forward in apprenticeships going forward, there will be opportunities for local young people to get themselves into very well paid professional jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Johnson, would you like to come in now, please? Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm sure people have had enough warning to put the earphones on. I'm just going to be quite quick. The capital projects, the majority of them are to be welcomed, giving investment in our society through schools, as we heard, or new housing. One of the 11 authorities with the right to build more housing. I welcome both of these. People are surprised how expensive it is to build a school. I think the figure we were talking about for new St Richard Gwyn is about 64 million. And as we heard, the new Iolo Morgannwg build is around 22 million ultimately, I think. I welcome the fact that this council is continuing to build council housing. We accept that we'll be spending more in years to come than in previous years. This is optimistic, but again, we never know which plans won't succeed in one financial year and will need to slide into the next year. I know that we had an in-depth conversation about this in the committee, in the last committee, where we spoke about the fact that around 6 million had been allocated for housing builds this year, and it's actually being transferred over to the following year, and that includes the Western Gateway compound and the old police station in Cowbridge. There are reasons behind this, but it is there is cause to be optimistic and to understand that there are some things which may be postponed outside of the control of the council. I noted in the last meeting of the Resources Committee, and I will once again highlight this, is the lack of mention in the capital plans of the need for another Welsh medium comprehensive in Vale of Glamorgan. The current school will be fully subscribed soon, and we urgently need a second, hopefully in the west of the county. This is not present in the capital plans before us this evening, and if it's not in the plans now, for whichever reason, when will we see this materialised in the plans? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I don't know, Matt, again, I'm coming back to you. Is this one for you to... Oh, we've got Liz.
Diolch.
Yeah, thank you.
Fedrai
I can answer part of that. Certainly, it is the intention to build a new Welsh medium comprehensive, and whilst we're at it, we're not just looking at mainstream, we're also looking at the special school aspect. We definitely agree that there's a need and long-term planning is needed, but of course, in order to realise that, we need to have the capital to be able to build them. But without a shadow of a doubt, we definitely have plans which are favourable in terms of developing Welsh medium education. And perhaps somebody else might be able to come in with a little bit more detail in terms of where we're at, but in terms of when. Thank you.
Thank you very much there, Liz Jones, our Director of Education. Is there anything else that you would like to ask on that one, Ian? Or shall we?
That's
Councillor Johnson,
my questions.
You okay with that?
I'm just we're going to get some more detail being provided there. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you. I don't know if is there anybody in the room who can do that today, or are we going to receive that at a later date?
Thank you, Chair. The Chief Executive's indicating to come in.
Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, I can just come back on a couple of the other projects. Western Gateway, I think, was mentioned. And I think it's fair to say that we're closer on that than we ever have been, simply because either side of Christmas, we've now got the in-principle support of the Health Board. That's going through the Regional Partnership Board, and all the soundings are positive for that. So we should be seeing some good progress in the next financial year on the Western Gateway project. Just to add on the secondary school, second Welsh medium language school, there is a commitment for that. It's just not in there at the moment as a financial commitment. Most members will appreciate that when we are looking at new schools and new developments of this nature, we will be looking at Welsh Government in terms of providing the lion's share of the financial requirements for a new school, and it's also going to be caught up in various Section 106 agreements if and when the development sites come forward in that location as well. So there's a few pieces of the jigsaw that need to come together to enable that to happen, and that is why there isn't a specific allocation in the budget moving forward. But that doesn't mean, and please don't take that to mean that there won't be one coming forward in future, because it is a commitment for the authority. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Rob. Councillor Johnson, are you happy with that response? Do you want to ask any more questions?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure there'll be more information forthcoming. I've already had some from the department, but the issue is that it's not appearing in our formal paperwork going forward. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Do we have anyone else then who'd like to ask questions on the draft capital programme? I can't see anybody online. Amy, do we have anyone?
No indication in the chamber, Chair.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then I think we'll just move to the recommendations, which were that the committee considers and debates the report, which we have done. And I think if our comments, as with agenda item 4 are just shared with Cabinet for them to know what we're thinking on this. And if everybody's happy with that, we shall move. So can I have a hand to move from this agenda item? Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. Okay, so we're moving swiftly on to agenda item 6, which is any items that the Chair has decided are urgent, and there aren't any. And then agenda item 7, which is the part 2, which would be excluding press and any members of the public. And we don't have any items for there either. So that really just brings us to the conclusion of this extraordinary meeting tonight. As already been shared, the process as is now. Our comments from tonight will go back to Cabinet that sits on the 26th of February, and they will then consider the draft budget in its entirety, and then it will forward on then to the 9th of March and full council, where we will agree or not agree to the budget. I believe consultation then would be finishing with the public this Friday, and also all of those views will be shared with Cabinet as well when they discuss the draft budget. So thank you for everybody tonight for participation, for your comments, and I do hope you have a pleasant evening wherever you do next. See you soon.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Bye now.